Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Talk, episode 14.
Hi.
I
had
to see people are coming on already. Comments are
Hi,
coming.
Carol.
Come and say hi, guys. Let us know that we're live. And also, don't forget to share so we can get this out there to as many people as possible. And good evening, everyone. Good evening, Leanne. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Although I'm a little sad. Hi, Sean. Hi, Jackie. And Jane is in. I'm a little sad because this is your last one, isn't it?
Yeah. I thought you were going to do this at the end.
So I'm just going to pop this on straight away. Just because people know how bad I am. My memory's terrible. But it's been lovely. We've had such fun. Do you remember the intro that we did when we spent about 3 hours, myself and just laughing for about 3 hours to do a 5-minute clip, not even a 5-minute, 2 minutes. We laughed so much. In the end, we just said I think it was midnight. We got it out, didn't we?
Oh, it took ages. We kept mucking up on like silly words and stuff.
And I love some of the bloopers or whatever you want to call them. We end up doing. And last week when the recording finished early, and it was left like a rabbit in headlights on your own on screen. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing.
Oh, well, like we were just talking, to me, I think this year is about grabbing every opportunity and just flowing with it. And I've been like given some good things, and I think my life's just going in different directions. For me, I just feel really overwhelmed with love to be able to just help people at the moment.
Yeah.
And I just feel, if anything, I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's given me so much insight to myself, which, it's all very well everyone always telling you it's there, but sometimes you don't see it. And I think for me doing this, like each week, it's fascinated me how we have our little chat at the back and you go, I'm nervous about going on. And I'm like, oh, I'm not, I've just taken to it.
I always get nervous. I don't know why, whether there's 5 people watching or 50 people watching. Yeah, but it's been absolutely brilliant. So we've got one more recording that we did with a philosophy session with the great Leonard Tatt, which we're going to air before we finish. Not tonight, but we will air that, guys. And it's one not to be missed. We're talking about modern mediumship. So and where that kind of fits in today's society.
But I'll still be tuning in, everyone, and heartfelt. But like, it's been beautiful to be part of everything.
Yeah, it's been absolutely, and we've had such brilliant guests. What's been your favorite guest?
I think I've loved all of them, because each person you have on brings different. And I'm a really debate person, as you've seen.
Yeah.
When I'm passionate about something, I don't, as you can see, I don't hold anything back. So it's been really lovely to engage. And what's been really beautiful is the people that I've managed to touch outside of it as well as inside of it.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
But people can still get you on your page, can't they?
Yeah. So I've started Guide to Spiritual Awakening. It's just to be able to help people. Everyone, spirituality means something different to everyone. And it's an individual journey for each and every person. So I just think as many people as you can touch and ignite that unconditional love and help them on their journey is what it's about for me.
Agreed. Absolutely. Try to inspire and help people. So really, we need to get our guest on. We'll make the announcement of who we're coming on later on. We won't just say anything just yet. Because I want this to be about you, this show, Leanne. Okay, and I want you to really enjoy this last show. And we've got another brilliant guest tonight, and something different. And this gentleman's name is Mr. Bryant, Mr. Craig Bryant, and he's a paranormal investigator. He's also an author, and he does a lot of podcasts. He's also got a book out called, I should know this. Hang on, I've got it on one of the banners. Or have I? The Shadow Man of Akron. And it's available on Amazon. So without further ado, let's get Craig in. Let's get him in. Let's have a chat. Hi, Craig.
Hi.
Good evening.
Oh, good evening.
How you doing? Poor old Leanne, she's crying. So
sorry.
I know I feel like I'm gate crashing a party here. Sorry.
No, not at all.
So
That's
Craig,
me. I'm one of those like oversensitive people.
there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing
No.
wrong with that. So can I just say though, Craig, one of the things that we like to find out about people is their journey, their passion. So what would you call yourself, first of all? What are you? Are you just passionate about the ghost hunts that you do? Because you don't just do ghost hunts, you do UFO stuff as well.
Yeah.
And there's so much that you do.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything, really. I started off with an interest in the paranormal. And about 3 years ago now, I decided I wanted to write a book, because I'd realized that I had so many personal experiences, and also my family, my in-laws, had some really interesting experiences at a farm they used to live at. So my wife has told me all those stories as well. And then I started to collect stories from other people, so very personal stories. And I wanted to write a book of stories, ghost stories mainly, that would never have been published before, because they were really personal stories to people, you know. And sometimes people are quite reticent to talking about ghosts, because, you know, there is still a stigma attached to it, although it's not as stigmatized, I think, now as it was, say, you know, 20 years ago or whatever. And then from there, I've sort of moved into looking at I'm quite a sort of history buff, local history buff as well. I live near Pendle Hill in Lancashire, which is famous for the Pendle witch trials of 1612. But when you start to look into the area, not only is it rich in paranormal activity, but it's also rich in UFO activity. And I've actually just finished writing my second book. It's not out there at the minute because it needs editing, but whilst I was doing that, I was doing research into places like Morecambe Bay, for instance, where there is a massive amount of UFO activity going back nearly 100 years, you know, pre-Second World War. So that's something that I've got really interested in. I love talking to local people. I love collecting local stories. The amount of paranormal activity that goes on in a relatively small area around where I live is quite fascinating, really. It's quite frightening. And again, UFO stuff, I've also started to get into a little bit of cryptozoology. There've been cases of animal mutilations in the area. And so all that, really, it's just all come together. And of course, we're doing the podcast as well. I speak to a lot of people from different fields. So I've spoken to, you know, very eminent people within the UFO community. So people like Philip Mantle, Paul Sinclair, Philip and Ronald Kinsella. And I've also spoken to people who've had paranormal experiences as well. So people like a guy who was doing some work with the Most Haunted team at the courts and police station in Akron. A guy called Eden. So I interviewed him. Simon Entwistle, who's a local paranormal investigator to this area, Pendle witch expert, and so on. So yeah, I've got quite a big area of interest, and I'm sure I could have condensed that down into something, into an answer that was a lot shorter.
No,
but that's
perfect.
basically what I'm interested in.
Yeah. So have you ever had have you ever seen a spit it out, Leanne, sorry, I'm still like not here. Have you ever seen a UFO or anything like that? You have? How far back did that spark it for you?
Well, I had the first paranormal experience that I had was when I was about 18. And that's actually when I saw what I now realize is called a shadow man. Hence the title of the book. However, at the time, it wasn't a well-known term, because we're going back a long time, because I'm not 18 anymore. So we're going back to the sort of mid 80s, really. So at the time, the term shadow man or hat man, as some people call them, wasn't a term that was used. It was only really through paranormal shows. That's the guy in America who passed away recently. He was the one that coined the phrase. I can't remember his name. It'll come back to me in a minute. But he was the one that coined the phrase. And as I say, it was only when I started doing research, I just suddenly had I had this idea to write a book, and it had been going around in my head for years, to be honest. And strangely enough, I saw a UFO. And it was seeing this UFO that then made me think, well, hang on a minute, I've got so much to write down. I'm going to write a book. And even though the UFO sighting was very brief, it lasted probably about a minute. It was very far away. It wasn't something, it wasn't like a huge craft that was hovering over my garden or anything like that. But it was something up in the sky that was acting really strangely. It was that really that sort of made my mind up that I was going to start doing research into what I'd seen all those years ago, and it was from that point that I realised that it was something that we now call a shadow man or a hat man, and that was quite an interesting experience looking back on it, and I suppose really it sort of formed the person that I am when it comes to being interested in the paranormal and so on, because it is something that was quite frightening really at the time.
Wow. Somebody's got a question there that was on the tip of my tongue as well.
Yeah. So was you on your own at that particular time though, when you experienced that?
Yes, although it's an interesting story. And I've just noticed somebody's asked a question about Warner Street, which I'd love to get to in a minute because
well, guys, don't wait. Keep sending your questions in. Adam is in the background helping us out. He's starring those questions, so we will come back to you. He's helping us out. Thank you, Adam. But sorry, Craig, carry on.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's because it is actually linked into the area that is where Warner Street is. It was actually on a street called Cannon Street, but Cannon Street runs onto Warner Street, and it was actually a club. It was the old Accrington Conservative Club, actually, which is no more. It burnt down about 10 years ago. It became a nightclub. And then it just became empty and derelict. It was vandalized. I mean, it was a real shame because it was an absolutely beautiful building. It was well over 100 years old, and it was an absolutely magnificent building. And you can still go online and Google it and look at photographs of as it was before it became the victim of arson. But I used to work behind the bar there when I was at college. And it was a midweek. We used to be a ballroom on the top floor. It was 3 floors. There was a ballroom on the top floor, and then there was 2 smaller rooms on the middle floor, which is where we used to have sort of like wedding receptions and birthdays and all. That's 18th and 21st, and that's mainly where I used to work. But I also used to do a couple of shifts just for a bit of extra money, really, during the week in the members' bar downstairs. And the members' bar was the room next to it was where they had the snooker tables. They had 3 big full-size snooker tables in there because it was like a posh version of a working man's club, really. And the bar there was a sort of like, if you imagine, it was like sort of like almost like a serving hatch. So it was sort of waist high opening from one room where the main bar was to sort of like a little serving hatch type bar into the snooker room. And it was getting on in the evening. This is in the olden days when they used to close at 10:30. And bearing in mind, we didn't have mobile phones or anything like that in those days. I mean, we really are going back to the Middle Ages. And I actually saw this figure which was stood in the snooker room, and it was actually leaning over towards through the serving hatch. And it was just like a dark figure. You couldn't make any facial features out. It was almost like a silhouette, but it was wearing a hat. And it was like, the only way I can describe it, it was like a fedora type hat. Now, when you look at reports of this phenomena from all over the world, 99 times out of 100 they're wearing these types of hats. So this is where I sort of, you know, put the two and two together and realized it was what people call the Hat Man or the Shadow Man. And it only stayed there for about maybe 15 seconds, something like that, which is quite a long time when you're looking at something that you don't expect to be there and you can't work out what it is. There was nobody else in the bar. There was nobody else in the room because we were just about to close up. And the only other person that was in the building was the steward of the club. And he was actually upstairs on the third floor. So we had these internal phone systems. This is why I say we had no mobile phones. So, of course, I couldn't take a photograph of it or anything like that. But I after it had disappeared, because it appeared and then disappeared, you know, quite quickly. And I grabbed hold of the phone and rang up to the top bar, and I said, you know, this guy was called Bernard, and I said, can you come downstairs? I said, I've just seen something a bit odd. So he came downstairs and he walked through the doors, and as he came up to the bar, he looked at me and he says, "You look like you've seen a ghost." And I said, "Well, funnily enough, you should mention it. Bearing in mind I'm 18 years of age, you know, I'm a bit, you know, typical teenage lad. I'm a bit, you know, cocky and a bit sure of myself, but this really shook me up." And I said, "Well, actually, strangely enough, I have." And he just looked at me and he said, "Oh, you've seen it as well, have you?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Oh, I've seen it." He said, "It's like a dark shadow in the snooker room. That's sort of like, you know, like a dark outline." And I said, "Yeah, something like that." And he said, "Yeah, lots of people have seen it over the years." He said, "We've had people who've worked, you know, behind the bar, who've seen it and just put the coat on and left and never come back again. And some of the regulars knew about it. And so, yeah, it was quite a well-known story, but I didn't know anything about it. Because it's not the sort of thing that you know, people talk about really.
Yeah.
Just off the cuff, you know. So that sort of left me with a bit of a lasting impression. And there was also another occasion when I was working there, when I was actually up on the third floor, and there was some poltergeist activity, and there was always something quite strange about the third floor. It was a ballroom, actually. And like I said, it's a shame that the building ended up in the, well, it's not there anymore now. It's just a big pile of rubble, really. I think they're looking at building flats on it. But there was actually a proper ballroom floor, and it was apparently it was sprung, and the only other one is at the Blackpool Tower Ballroom. So, you know, it was quite an expensive floor, really, and obviously, you know, they must have spent an awful lot of money when they put it in there. But there was something really strange about the whole room. It was, and again, if you go online, you can actually see there are photographs of it still online. There's a couple of quite good black and white photographs, actually. And yeah, I was up there on my own one Saturday morning. I was actually,
sorry, Craig, is that on your website?
There are some photographs on there, I think. Yeah, there are photographs in the book.
Okay.
Of the ballroom and of the front of the building as well before it burnt down. So I was up there on my own one Saturday morning, stocking the bar up, and there was I was in the storeroom, which was around the back of the bar, and I suddenly heard glass breaking coming from the bar. And I went back into the bar, and there was glass all over the floor, and it was one of those really heavy handled pint glasses, you know, like the dimpled, you know, like the old-fashioned style pint glasses, you know, with a handle and sort of dimpled all the way around. And we used to hang them up on big hooks under the underside of the bar, and there was a hook that was empty, so it had obviously. You know, that's the hook that the glass had come off. But because of the size of the hooks, there was absolutely no way it could just have fallen off. You know, you literally had to pick it up and lift it off the hook. And then, of course, you know, they're quite substantial glasses. So it must have been thrown down to the ground with quite a force in order to break, because I remember sometimes dropping the glasses on the floor and they literally bounced. because they were that thick. They were the proper old-fashioned, handled, pint glasses. So that I couldn't explain that. The only explanation I've got is that some unseen hand, shall we say, had picked up this glass. Why? Again, when you start thinking about, how it happened, when it happened, why did it happen then when I was there? Why did it not happen 10 minutes before I went up into the room? Why did it not happen 10 minutes later? There had to be some sort of intelligence involved in order for it to happen then when I was there, to have the effect that it had on me, which made me jump a little bit, to put it mildly. But there was poltergeist activity. There was all sorts of stuff going on there. And it was a really interesting place. So that's really the first sort of experience the first couple of experiences that I had when I was younger. Okay,
how old was you when that happened?
I was probably about 18, 19, something like that.
So, okay, I'm an 18-year-old and I've just seen some poltergeist activity. How, apart from having need new pants,
having the yips,
how was it? Did that affect you? How was you just inquisitive?
Are
you one of those people, Craig, that don't have any fear?
No, I have fear. I suppose, at that age, really, I probably had less fear than I have now. I don't know, really. It didn't. You see, again, it's not the sort of thing that I couldn't go to the pub with my mates the night after and say, "Oh, by the way, I've seen a ghost," because they'd have just laughed at me. Because that's so. I didn't really sort of talk about it or think too much about it until really a few years ago, when I literally sat down with a pen and a piece of paper and started writing down all the stories that I'd been told over the years, all the things that had happened to me, things that my wife had told me about when they lived at the farm, and so on. So, it was quite frightening at the time. It was more perplexing, if you know what I mean, rather than being outright frightening. It didn't stop me going back to the building, and it didn't stop me working behind the bar for another few months before I left college. But it wasn't something that I openly discussed with anybody, because you just didn't do that back then. We're talking 30 odd years ago, so it was pre-internet, pre all this, pre all the, paranormal investigation programs that go on YouTube, and dare I say it was pre Most Haunted, which was obviously, the template for what a lot of us do these days. So yeah.
We're having lots of great questions coming in. One from another great one from Carol. Did you feel that you ever, because again, to explain attachments, ever bring any kind of energy back with you from wherever you'd been?
Not personally, no. But I do have an item of furniture in the house at the minute that's causing me a little bit of concern because of what's been going on recently. It's actually a piano, and my wife bought it about 10 years ago. And I've done a little bit of research on it. It's it's well over 100 years old. It's the reason she bought it is because she's musical. She comes from a musical family, and we had this daft idea that our son, who was about 5 at the time, who wanted to learn to play the piano, basically. And we actually got it fairly cheap from a local. There's a shop that sells second-hand pianos in Clitheroe, which is the nearest local town to me. So I've done a bit of research on this piano, but almost immediately after we bought, after Sarah who bought it, she started having really bad luck. She lost a job. There was all sorts of things happened, and I was always, there was always a feeling about it. I always had a feeling that there was something attached to it, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. For instance, it resides in the dining room. which was always a cold room anyway, but it's an even colder room now, even in the middle of summer. My son has been in there a few times and said, he actually said to me that he'd seen a mist in there. Now, both myself and my wife have seen shadows in the, well, in fact, there was one happened about 2 or 3 months ago where we were both sat in the lounge, and suddenly we both said, "Did you see that?" And we said it at the same time, and there was a dark shadow moved across the wall. Now, we live on a cul-de-sac. There were no cars outside. It wasn't car headlights. The curtains were drawn. The only thing we do have is like a sort of little wood burning stove in the lounge, but it wasn't giving off enough ambient light to create a shadow like that. But the most amazing thing that happened, and this only happened a few weeks ago, was we have a vestibule, if you know what I mean. So it's like my son used to call it an airlock when he was little, and the front door has got the letterbox is a really violent spring on it, if you know what I mean. It's a really stiff spring.
Okay.
And somebody had shoved a leaflet through, but it was only sticking out halfway. So it was halfway in and halfway out. And to be honest with you, it'd been there for a couple of days because I was too lazy to pull it through. And I thought, I know what it is. It's just like the local rubbish that, you know, that gets shoved through the letterbox. And we hadn't had any post for a couple of days, so the postman hadn't shoved it through. Now, okay. I was actually in the vestibule we've got 2 dogs, and I was just getting the leads on. I was getting my boots on to take them out for a walk. And the best way to describe it is the only way that if there's a letter or a leaflet or something that's stuck halfway in the letterbox, the only way that you can get it out is to either pull it from inside or outside, basically, and okay. then the spring will snap. You'll hear it. Now I know that there was nobody outside because I was right next to the door, and I would have been able to see through the glass if there was anybody outside. And secondly, we've also got a video doorbell, and that would have told me if anybody was outside as well. Yeah. And as I was stood there, it was as if something invisible, an invisible hand, grabbed hold of this leaflet, and I saw it getting pulled through the letterbox and then just landing on the floor. And the letterbox made that, you know, sort of snap, because it's like a brass letterbox, so it made that metallic sound as it was pulled through. And it was like just grabbing hold of it and really yanking it through. And there was nobody outside pushing it through. And it was literally about 2 or 3 feet away from where I was stood. But I didn't feel anything, but I just looked at it and I thought, how the hell did that happen? And the only explanation I've got is that something physically grabbed hold of it and pulled it through the letterbox. And like I say, that happened probably about 3-4 weeks ago, maybe. And we haven't heard or seen or felt anything for the last few weeks since that happened. Okay. But I can guarantee that something else will happen.
Okay, how do you?
Anyone... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go. You go.
So, as I lived in a house where we had something like this, and I don't know if it's where I was like sensitive, but the house was on ley lines, and we had a swimming pool in the back garden, and both my girls were in the hot tub one day, and they were screaming hysterically. So I ran out there and went, "What's wrong?" And they said there was a man in a top hat and a suit walked along the side of the swimming pool and into the toilet. Well, I had a garage that was attached on the side, which was my therapy room. So I went straight round there, and there's no way out of this toilet. There was one door in, one door out. So I went round there and there was nothing in there, but they were hysterical that it was in there. Yeah. But we got to the stages where I was having to salt the beds, so none of us were being touched. I'd wake up during the night and my hands would be pinned back on the bed. I had bruise marks all down my arms. Pictures would fly off the wall. And there was, when we left there, I came out and we had the house, like people come out, tried to clear the house, and it wasn't having it. It was an energy that liked negativity, did not like happiness. And I had a gentleman out that was a psychic photographer. And when we left, I gave him the keys, and he goes, "You meet me there." And I was like, "No, when I left there, I cut everything so that nothing came with us." But he went in there and he said as soon as he walked in that house, he could feel something. And when he took the pictures, he could see he sent them to me. I ended up burning them to get rid of them because I didn't want anything coming that way. But you could see the image of a person sitting on the end of the beds.
Right.
And the whole place, I mean, bizarre things were happening. But have any of your family experienced stuff like that kind of thing happening? I can remember the rug being pulled out from underneath my feet and I fell on the bed and broke my ribs. It was like, when something's trying to get your attention, and the more obviously the more lighter you are, the more it tries.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering whether you're like your wife, your children.
Not here, no. I mean it's only ever been these sort of misty shapes or these shadows until this happened with the letter. But my wife Sarah, her family owned a farm in a place called Rising Bridge, which is near a town called Haslingden. So it's actually it's sort of it's right on the edge of the M66 motorway, which is the main motorway to Manchester from up here.
Yeah.
And it was 16th century farmhouse, so it was built late 1590s. And it was one of the oldest surviving farmhouse buildings in Lancashire, apparently. And her mum and stepdad actually had a cattery and dog kennels there. So it was still very much a working farm, but they had a poltergeist. And they had things such as a floating whiskey glass that floated across the room in front of Sarah's grandparents. And this is a story that I've been told many times about what used to go on there. They used to hear heavy footfalls, especially up on the first floor landing. But the peculiar thing about that was that they said it used to sound like hobnail boots on stone.
Wow.
That sort of metallic metal on stone sound. And the floorboards, they had to remove the floorboards on the landing because they had dry rot. And when they removed the floorboards, there was the old stone lintels underneath. But they used to hear these footsteps going up and down, especially at night. And it always used, whatever the entity was, it used to stop outside Sarah's sister's room, her younger sister, and used to hammer on the door. And her sister used to shout at it to go away. Could be clogs, yeah, absolutely. That sort of sound, yeah. And she used to shout obscenities to it, apparently, to make it go away, and it used to, but then it'd come back again the next night. So yeah. And when they were, another story, when they were selling the farm, when they decided to pack up and move to Spain, actually, every time either the estate agent came round or somebody came round to view the farm, all the electrics would blow every single time, and they never had any electrical problems any other time. And they used to have one of those really old-fashioned fuse boxes with the really big fuses. And Sarah's stepdad had to basically find a source where he could buy boxes and boxes of them. And every time somebody came round to the house to have a look at it, at the farm, to look at it, all the fuses had blown. He'd have to go down into the cellar and replace every single fuse before he could get the lights back on. So again, it was almost as if somebody didn't want them to leave. But
so did they ever have anyone in to clear the energies?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. No, they just became used to it. Yeah, they just lived with it. They just became used to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite skeptical about people who claim to be able to clear negative energies. Not that I've had any actual experience of it. I'm just a little bit skeptical about it, and I have spoken to people who claim that they can do so. And I suppose really I should keep more of an open mind about it. But I wouldn't want. You see, I had a chat with a lady. Again, it's a story in the book of a house in a place called Clayton-le-Moors, which is near Akron, and they had a very violent poltergeist. And she invited a local Catholic priest in who claimed that he could cleanse the place, clear the place out, put this evil spirit to rest. and she said it made it 10 times worse. The things that were going on just intensified so much that eventually they had to sell up and move. But I think sometimes you can make things worse. I don't know, but no, as far as I'm aware,
someone's intention.
Yeah, I suppose I'm a bit sort of reticent to winding something up that's already, causing a few problems. But it's things like it's like Ouija boards and stuff like that. I mean, I've spoken to people who've told me bad stories about messing with Ouija boards and stuff like that. So I think you've got to be really, really careful, really careful.
So can I ask you, Craig, then, do people ask you to come in to investigate what's going on in their house?
No, I have done a couple of investigations. I'm not, I don't go into, I'm not what you would call your sort of classic ghost hunter. So I don't have reams and reams of electronic equipment and, EVP meters and all that sort of stuff. That's not really what I do. I will go to somebody's house, sit down, talk to them. They can tell me the story. But I don't pretend to be a ghost hunter in inverted commas. I collect stories from people. I talk to people about their experiences. Sometimes people just feel better by telling somebody who they know is going to believe them. Yeah. Again, I've got some examples of that in the book of people that I've spoken to who've had really interesting stories to tell me. But I'm not what you would call a classic ghost hunter. You see, again, ghosts don't perform. Entities don't perform to order. That's what makes me laugh about a lot of these TV programs and a lot of these YouTube channels and a lot of these people who investigate, haunted houses and sometimes charge people a lot of money for coming along and for the pleasure of doing it. You're not going to get a ghost to perform to order, or you're not going to get a poltergeist to perform to order, or an entity or whatever. And so I think this ghost hunting aspect of it is more entertainment than actual scientific or research purposes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's more. It can be. Forgive me for saying this, thrill seeking for a lot of people. But I get why people do it.
I did a walk round of a school. This again was by talking to a friend of a friend, if you like, and it was a school in a town called Darwin near Blackburn, and I actually put it out. I actually put it out as a podcast. I had the recording. I'd forgotten I had the recording actually, because what happened was one of the maintenance guys we used to call them janitors, didn't we, back in the day? But he's like maintenance guy. He actually took us around on it was a Saturday afternoon, and he took us around, showed us around the school, took us to all the places where various paranormal activity had been witnessed, and I recorded it just on a dictaphone because I wanted to make sure that I had all the facts and everything for when I put it in the book, and I forgot that I had the recording, and I was just looking on my hard drive one day, found it, and thought, I'll put that out as a podcast. And I actually got some really good feedback on it, because it was basically as it happened, but there was nothing, it wasn't sensationalized. It was just, the guy he was called Stuart, and he was just walking me and my wife, and my son actually came as well with us. He's 15 now, so he'd be about 13 at the time. And he just
we've had Poltergeist interfere. Oh, you're back, Craig.
Yeah, it's okay. Just took us around all the different parts of the school where different types of paranormal activity had been seen, and there was a hell of a lot. There was all sorts of stuff going on. Some really quite hair-raising stuff had been going on there, and it's interesting because a lot of people associate paranormal activity with old properties. Now, this school was 10 years old. The building had been there 10 years. And it wasn't the building that was causing the activity. It was where it was. It was the ground that it was, and it was what used to be there before. So looking at the history of the place, looking at old maps, looking at what used to be there before, it soon became pretty obvious as to why the paranormal activity was happening. And it was because there used to be a church there. There was a graveyard, which a lot, the vast majority of the bodies, well, of the marked graves anyway, the bodies have been exhumed and have been moved to a different graveyard. But there would probably have been unmarked graves, going back to the time when there was a lot of Victorian housing around there. There were a lot of factories, a lot of mills. Looking at maps from the turn of the last century, it was pretty obvious that there would have been a lot of unmarked graves. So there's probably still, sadly, the remains of some people probably still under there. And it wasn't so much the building, as I say, it was where it was and what had gone on in the past. But that was a fascinating story. And some of the stuff that Stuart told us about what goes on there is really quite scary. And this is a modern day secondary school, and this stuff's going on. So yeah, I mean, it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carol's just asked a question.
We're getting some feedback, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
That was the show.
Oh, really? It's going back in. So Carol has asked, are you spiritual or have a religion, Craig?
No. I'm sort of halfway between being an atheist and an agnostic. So if it's proved to me that there is something else, there is a God or something similar, then I'll believe it. But I've no proof at the moment that there is, and so therefore, organized religion doesn't do anything for me. I like to think I'm more attuned to what's going on around me. So I think the seasons. I mean, I suppose I had a very interesting conversation with a Wiccan lady, and I'm trying to get her on my podcast actually.
Okay.
We sort of lost contact a little bit. She's been poorly, unfortunately, but she was actually my son's girlfriend's mum. But my son and his girlfriend have split up, as you do when you're 15. But she was fascinating, and she was very much she identified as a witch, but her religion was Wiccan. She was very much in tune with what goes on around us, the seasons, the old spirits that people used to believe in, and I think I'm probably leaning more towards that way. The older that I get, the more I sort of become aware of what's around me, the natural world and everything else. I think I'm more of a humanist, I think, in that way.
Okay.
So what do you think the ghosts are then? If you don't believe in that kind of thing, but you're going into houses that are haunted or people have had things and you've seen things for yourself. So how do you stand on the aspect of not being, stop laughing, Paul. No, he's smiling away. So I'm trying to get my head around how you're not spiritual when you've seen UFOs you've seen energy as in a ghost, which is the afterlife.
Well, is it? Because there's the stone tape theory for start off. So energy can be in a place or attached to a place. So whether that's a building or, in the case of the school, the ground that the building was on. And one of the ghosts, or one of the entities, whatever you want to call it, that was seen there was clearly a replay. So it's like a video recording. You know, going back years when we had video recorders, it's like a video recording. So it's where something happens and the energy is somehow imprinted on that place, whatever that place may be, and a set of circumstances makes it replay itself. So it's like releasing the energy and replaying itself. So that's obviously one type of ghost, which is the replay. The other theories, I mean, poltergeists are interesting, because one of the theories is that they can be attached to adolescent children because of the emotional energy that they give off. Now, you know, going back to what I was saying about what was going on here in my house, my son's 15. You know, I mean, he is Kevin the teenager. There's hormones running wild in our house at the minute. He is absolutely horrendous. But he's giving off emotional energy, and it's possible that something has attached itself to that emotional energy. Now, you know, I'm not saying that there is no afterlife, because I don't know until it's proved one way or the other. That's why I said I'm sort of halfway between an atheist and an agnostic. I don't believe that when you die, your energy just disappears. It has to go somewhere. You know, the universe recycles energy all the time. How you manifest into the next stage of your existence, I don't know. None of us know that until we get to that point. But you know, energy just doesn't disappear. Now, there's also theories about time slips. There's theories about you know, seeing things like the Shadow Man, for instance. One of the theories of that is that it's a time slip, and you're seeing somebody from another time, whether that be in the past or in the future. And I've spoken to people who've witnessed time slips, and they are very, very real to them.
I've done it myself.
Yeah, they are very, very real. So religion, I don't equate religion with paranormal activity, because I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife that is described by religion, but there has to be something. I don't believe in heaven and I don't believe in hell. That's why I'm not religious, but there has to be something, because energy just doesn't disappear. And as I said, you know, these different types of paranormal activity, I think, are dependent on what happens to that energy at that particular time. So if you've got something that's a real emotional trauma, somebody, you know, unfortunately has a violent death, for instance, and it leaves that emotional energy behind at that place, that's why you get these sort of replay hauntings. And as I said, poltergeist is something completely different, and I'm not 100% sure what causes them, but there are theories that I would subscribe to, and one of those is emotional energy.
Triggered by? Do you feel that's triggered by the person in the house, or?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Possibly triggered by hormones, by a heightened emotional state.
Some of the old investigations of going back in historically, I can think of a few. Even Matthew Manning, the famous medium, he had as a child, I think he was on, I can't remember the guy's name. He was on a chat show in the 70s, and he was describing to this guy, and I mean, like a BBC One interview with like 5 million people watching. I saw it on YouTube, and he was talking about the poltergeist activity that happened within the house. And his dad was a lecturer at Cambridge University, and they were like, this can't be happening, you know. And they studied it, and they linked it to his energy. It was Matthew's energy that was connecting to the poltergeist.
Yeah.
So that kind of the hormones, like you said yourself, it's interesting that you've got a teenager with raging hormones at the moment, and you're having your own experiences in your house.
Exactly.
So there could be a link there.
It could be, and it took me a while to put two and two together, to be honest. But I don't discount any theories. I mean, I'm not saying that God doesn't exist. All I'm saying is that until I'm proved that he or she does, I've got to sit on the fence because I don't believe. But there's a lot of things I don't believe in, and if I'm proved that they exist, I mean, I'll hold my hand up and say, yeah, well, I was wrong. There's irrefutable proof, and
I just said it from a spiritual base. I didn't say it from like a godly base.
No.
Yeah, they're two different things. Me and Paul have had this debate a few times.
We have.
I don't do the religion thing.
Mm.
I never have done. To me, spirituality for me is unconditional love. So I was doing it more for the aspect that, to me, when we pass, we are, as on earth now in human form, we are energy. We are when we pass over as well. Our soul is just energy. So I was interested to see how you couldn't link the two together, or how you linked the two together.
Yeah, well, I do because as I said, I don't believe that your energy just disappears. Now, whether that energy you could say that's your soul,
essence.
In essence, I don't know, but I don't believe that when somebody does die, that the life energy that they had doesn't change into something else. It's just what it is and where it goes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know until I'm proved one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Alishka has just put a quick question on here. Well, it's not really a question. It's asking about an incident she had during the night of a loud bang. She woke up and she thought it was the postman. Went to the door. It was 5 p.m. in the morning, and it happened several times. Do you think it was my mother, Paul? Well, I can't link into that right now, but I did have a survey. I was doing a service at Nick. Why can't I think of his name? My mind's going completely blank. At the service in Liverpool Christian Spiritualist Church, and that very phenomenon happened to one of the people in the audience. That there was a loud knock at the door, and it was that the message came through from her mother. So, yeah, I'm not ruling anything out on that side. So we come at things from a very different point of view, Craig, and it's always subject to your own
it's interesting seeing everyone's point of view.
Absolutely. I am open-minded, as I said. I am open-minded. I'm not closed-minded.
You must be. Come on, you've seen Alien.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So let's talk about open-mindedness.
I haven't seen an alien as such. No, I've seen a strange light in the sky. That's about as close as I've got to aliens.
So what would you have identified that with then, if it wasn't?
Yeah, what would you? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it didn't behave in any way that a conventional aircraft would have behaved. And it exhibited certain behaviors that are sort of classic UFO or UAP behavior in the fact that it was moving about very quickly. It was changing direction very sharply, which a conventional aircraft can't do. And then it shot off at speed, straight up, very, very fast, disappeared very quickly. And again, that sort of classic behavior of UFOs or unidentified objects, So unless there's some military hardware out there that can do that we don't know about, the only thing I can put it down to is something that is not man-made.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can look up at the sky at night, though, guys. It's worth just sitting out in the summer looking up at the night sky. I remember sitting outside your back garden, Leanne, and we watched the night sky about 2 o'clock in the morning, and some of the things were like, what was that? The way it behaved, you just it is hard to put your Signal's put a secret space program has a lot of UFOs. Who knows, Signal? Who knows?
Very
Be
possible.
nice to know your name as well, Signal. So, but yeah, someone's also asked, have you ever had a reading from a medium, Craig?
I have. It was a long time ago. It was over 20 years ago. I did it. to impress a lady who wanted to take me along. So I probably had ulterior motives. I went along with an open mind, and I have to say that a couple of things that he said made me question whether or not he was genuine or not in a positive way. So he got a couple of things right. One thing he said was about my dad, who'd very recently passed away at that point. And another thing he said was something about a relationship I was in at the time. And what he said would happen did eventually happen. So, but a lot of the other stuff that he came out with, I was a little bit skeptical about. But I would do it again. Like I said, I'm very open-minded about these sort of things. But in order to believe something, I need to have proof that something exists. I won't just say that I believe everything until.
I wasn't judging you. I was just trying to get my head around how you can do what you're doing and not believe in the. It intrigues me. It intrigues me how people used to feel the same about me. How could I work in the way that I worked and I didn't believe in the God aspect? So to me, I'm always intrigued how people come to where they are from where they've been, because no journey's ever the same.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Jill's made a very good point as well. I'm not going to read it out, but I'm just going to quickly show that. But it's really subject to our experiences and what happens to us. But you make a very good point as well, Craig, that not and I can't remember, you touched on it as well, Leanne. Not everything is spirit. And we can sometimes get carried away that experiences that we have, that was an entity, or that was somebody, and not everything is spirit. Although my first experience of touching, I had, the essence of spirit. I had no doubt in my mind that this was something beyond any kind of physical energy. It just blew me away. So I had an out-of-body experience as well, which helped me. I had a lot of questions, and over the years, I've had them answered slowly by spirit. So slowly, my belief system was kind of, because I come from a very down-to-earth background, and my father didn't believe, or was more fearful of those kind of things. So for me, I guess in some respects, it was quite good for me, because I questioned a lot of things and doubted a lot of stuff as well. Where was it in my imagination? So I think it's really healthy to have that, though. It really is. So
you shouldn't be blinded by thinking, taking everybody else's.
Yeah.
But you have to find out for yourself. But I feel if you're doing this kind of work, I don't, they're going to keep showing you stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And if that was done the other day with a letterbox right in front of you, it's if.
Well, I can't explain that. I really, I can't.
Zoe said the same thing as well. She said the same thing when someone knocked on the door. Knocks, raps. I've seen handles going really fast, movement. What's probably been for you? What's been the best evidence you've ever captured?
Well, the letterbox, really. I mean, that still puzzles me now. Actually, I can't logically think of a reason why, how that happened recently. I mean, I saw my my grandmother after she'd passed away, but I didn't realize it was her until later when I looked at some old family photos, and I saw a photograph of her when she was younger. When she was a young girl, and it was only actually I'd started looking at my family tree. This was after my dad passed away, and I only realised then that this person that I'd seen standing in my bedroom was actually my grandma, but when she was younger. So that again, at the time when it happened, it was a freaky thing, because I couldn't work out whether I'd dreamt it or whether, whether it was just something that I couldn't explain. But again, I was a bit younger than I am now. And again, going back to seeing that shadow man again, I mean, that's, I can still visualize it now as clearly as the day that it happened, because it has that. When you see something like that, it does indelibly burn into your memory what you've seen, and in every detail. So yeah, but I mean, I've talked to people about their experiences, and the stories that they tell me about their experiences are quite amazing. There has to be something in it, that it's not. I do believe that spirits, ghosts, entities, whatever you want to call them, exist. It's just trying to explain, what they are, and why they manifest in the way that they do.
Yeah. Actually, while we're on here, guys, I'm just going to share the link. If you want to come on and you've got a quick question you want to ask Craig, I'm just going to share the link in the comments. Sorry,
I was going to say, somebody had mentioned something right at the beginning about Warner Street in Accrington. Yeah, I mean, I'll just briefly touch on that. Yeah, that's famous. It's probably one of the most haunted streets I think I've ever come across. Accrington was a town that I grew up in. I was born there. I grew up. I lived there for the first 40 odd years of my life before I moved out to where I live now. And it's only, it's not that far away. It's only 30 minutes in the car away from Accrington. Yes, it is on ley lines. And ley lines is something that I've done some research into. There are two major ley lines that cross at Pendle Hill. But I've spoken to a number of paranormal investigators, including a medium who has been into one particular property on Warner Street. She was absolutely convinced that there were lines of energy. It's a story that I'm going to put in my second book, actually, because there's a lot of paranormal activity around Warner Street, Cannon Street, Abbey Street. There was a medieval abbey there until about the 12th century, but there's been a lot of sightings of monks, hooded monks. There was a murder actually on Warner Street. Coming back to the paranormal activity on Warner Street, there was a murder in the late 1890s, and I've spoken to a couple of mediums who've been in there, a couple of investigators, done some research on it, and I think it's pretty clear that there's a particularly bad entity in one of the shops on Warner Street, and it's where this murder took place. And this male entity is very physical, shoves people about. I'm pretty certain that it's the person who committed the murder. Strangely enough, it manifests as a hat man, as a shadow man. And it's less than a quarter of a mile from where the Conservative Club was on Cannon Street. If anybody knows the layout of Accrington, if the person that asked that question knows the layout, they'll know that the bottom of Cannon Street goes past St James's Church. You cross over next to the Bridge Pub, and then you're on Warren Street. So it's literally, you can walk it in five minutes. So that whole area is an absolute hub of paranormal activity. And in fact, I interviewed a lady called Diane Pate, who's one of the investigators that investigated Warner Street. It's one of the episodes, one of the early episodes on my podcast. I think it's number 4 or something like that, number 5. Have a listen to that, because that's really interesting. And she told me some stuff off recording that she asked me not to mention actually in the on the broadcast, with relation to something that went on in the shop after the investigation, and it all surrounds, like I mentioned before, about Ouija boards. So it surrounds somebody doing something a bit silly with a Ouija board, and the ramifications of it are pretty horrendous, to be honest. So there's an awful lot of activity in that area in general. Warner Street, Cannon Street, Church Street, Abbey Street, all around there. And like I said, there's a whole chapter about that actually in the upcoming book.
Okay. What's the upcoming book called?
The tentative title is The Black Monks of Akron. It may well change to The Black Monks of Abbey Street. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm just in the process of editing at the minute, but it will be on Amazon. There'll be a link put on my website as soon as it's available on Amazon, and there'll be a link through to Amazon for it. There's a link to
brilliant
the Shadow Man book on there at the minute. So.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So we've got one of our viewers has popped on to quickly share her experience. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Zoe.
Hello.
Can you hear us all right?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Right. So what was your experience?
Obviously, when we had Theo and obviously Grad and the issues with
congratulations, by the way.
Oh, no. That was obviously the one we lost.
Oh
last
God,
year. And then
so sorry.
Obviously, someone knocked on the door at this, like just before it happened, and also my mum's phone got through from off the table underneath the chair.
Oh,
and I always say that there was definitely someone obviously watching over us.
Yeah.
To take him.
Yeah. Oh, God bless you. We're sorry to hear that. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful to know as well. Someone came for them. My own experience of my father when he passed, I was very aware of someone around him before he passed. In actual fact, both my sister and I had dreamt the night before he was going to pass. So, yeah. Thank you for coming on, Zoe.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We've got here's Mary. Hi, Mary. All this talk about paranormal activity is spooking me, particularly because out of the blue, my kitchen door has just jammed. So I was locked in the kitchen. Bless you. I just called my son home in the pub and he rescued me to force breaking the door architrave. I now feel mega spooked with back shivers. Bless you, Mary. I'm glad you're out, though. That's the main thing. I'm glad you're back with us. And there's another one here, as from Carol. Back in the day, there were lots of gang activity in Lancashire. And I believe quite a few bad things happened, like the craze in London. Could be some nasty entities around because of that. I didn't know that, Carol.
No, I didn't actually. That's really interesting. I might have to do some research on that.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I know there were gangs. I mean, I've actually just been watching there's been a documentary on I think it might be on BBC iPlayer at the minute. It's about the real Peaky Blinders.
Yeah,
and they were obviously, as we know, a gang going back to the late 1890s in Birmingham. But there were a lot of other gangs, similar gangs in cities all around at the time. So Manchester and Liverpool, they had their own versions of it, which I wasn't aware of. But I didn't know there was gang activity in Akron. So no, that's interesting. I'll have to do some research on that.
Yeah,
we could look at the historical stuff like that.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see if they're kind of around the same area as the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would.
It's like before we came on live, you were saying about some of the UFO sightings and to do with animals and things like that.
Yeah.
Has there been a link between all of that, where like the sightings with some of the things that have been found, or can it be related back to like other animals doing this kind of thing, or is it way beyond that?
Some of that's an interesting question actually, because I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, there was a calf. The carcass of a calf was found at a place called Todmorden, which is in West Yorkshire. So it's not too far from here.
Yeah,
and it's quite close to Hebden Bridge. And Hebden Bridge and Todmorden were the the site of the Alan Godfrey UFO abduction, which is probably one of the most famous UFO abductions that's ever happened in this country. And in fact, it's going to be made into a Hollywood film, I believe. So that could be quite interesting. See who plays him. But he was a police officer, and it was back in 1980, and he claims that he was abducted by aliens. Now, the area around Todmorden and Hebden Bridge, and right up to here to Pendle Hill, up towards Skipton, which again is just over the border into Yorkshire. There's an awful lot of UFO activity, lots and lots of sightings going back years and years, going back, way before the Second World War. And in fact, going back to even around the turn of the last century, there was reports of strange lights in the sky, unexplained things flying through the sky, even before aeroplanes were invented, in effect. But there was, I think, the thing with animal mutilations is it tends to depend on what your area of expertise is. So, for instance, I got sent some photographs of this carcass, and you can see that there are wounds that have been caused, and they are quite sort of classic. I'll try not to get too graphic. But the sort of the classic areas that are wounded. Now, for instance, you've probably heard of a guy called Paul Sinclair. He does a lot of research into animal mutilations up on the northeast coast of Yorkshire, and a lot of what he describes, the damage done to the carcasses that they find up there, again, were almost identical to what had happened to this animal in Todmorden. Now, the guy that I spoke to that went up to actually look at it when the carcass was still there, he was convinced that it was something off-world that had done it. Mm-hmm. Because of the evidence that he put forward, because of the injuries to the animal, because the grass and everything around it was up on moorland, but sort of like the ground around it hadn't been disturbed. It looked as if the animal had just been dropped from the sky, basically.
Oh, right.
There was no blood. There was nothing like that. And again, these are all absolute classic sort of symptoms of finding these animals. I sent the photographs to a guy called Rick Minter. Now, Rick Minter is an authority on big cats. So looking at, panther sightings, puma sightings, basically any sort of big cat sighting that obviously go back to the 1970s, where when they brought the Exotic Animals Act in, I think it was 1973, 74, something like that. A lot of these animals were released from private collections, and they've obviously got out, they've bred, and we do have big cats in this country. I'm convinced of it. There's far too many sightings. And he said that the wounds that were caused to the carcass were classic big cat wounds. So on one hand, you've got somebody whose expertise or interest is UFOs, saying that it was caused by aliens, in effect. And then on the other hand, you've got somebody whose expertise and an area of interest is big cats, and he's saying, no, it's been caused by a large cat that's attacked it and done the damage. And about 2 or 3 months later, there was a report in the local newspaper in Todmorden of a family who were walking down a road very close to where this animal had been found, and a large black, as they described it, puma jumped out from behind a wall, jumped onto the road in front of them, a couple of bounces, and off over the other wall and disappeared off down the field. So it depends on what your area of interest is as to how you assign something like that, if you know what I mean. But there was, to me, the lack of blood, the surgical incisions that have been made, that was weird. I don't know whether you saw the plant behind me or not, but it started moving.
I just saw that and I said it just moved.
Excuse me. That was very odd. Anyway, there you go. Yeah, I told you something going on here. So yeah, I mean, the lack of blood, the surgical incisions that had been made on the animal didn't suggest that it had been attacked by a carnivore that had just attacked it for meat, because the food, because it would just do a lot more damage and it would be a lot more haphazard. So I don't know, but there is a history in the area of sheep, for instance, sheep carcasses being found, again with similar sort of wounds. There's a place called Winter Hill, which is near Bolton. Again, that's not too far from here, and there's actually a dedicated group who look at sightings of cryptids and animal mutilations that are happening over there. So it happens all over the place, and I think it's a really interesting subject, actually, and it's a very, you look at the wounds on these animals and it's really perplexing, and you know, you read reports from places over in America, for instance, where, you know, they have very similar, well, they have a lot of animal mutilation cases over there, you know, cows and cattle and that sort of thing out on the plains, and they're all very, very similar types of wounds. So it just seems very odd,
Yeah,
that they're all the same sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about intelligent species mutilating animals.
I know, it's very odd. It is. It's a really strange thing to me. I don't understand what's going on at all, but there's so many similarities. The cases going back, you know, from all over the world and going back years. A lot of the wounds are exactly the same. They're the same parts of the animal, and they're all surgical in the way that these wounds have been caused. You know,
I've seen some documentaries on things like, because my other half was like, we were watching like a whole series on all different stuff, and that part did come up to it, the fact that we're like one of the planets that have got these type of animals where other planets haven't. So it's not done on, so this documentary was saying it's not done on like a malice. It's I think someone who's just put on there collecting DNA.
Yeah.
I've got no doubt. And again, you know, people who claim to have been abducted by aliens, a lot of the time they claim to have been, in their words, experimented on. But again, you know, are they collecting DNA? I don't know.
No. It's one of those things that we'll probably never ever find out. But it's been going on for years. It's not in the public eye, is it? It's like I said to everyone, you have to go looking for it to find it.
Even if we did and got beamed up to the ship, who's going to believe us anyway?
Well, exactly.
You know, it's crazy. Carol makes a good point on here. A man was found on top of a coal heap with strange marks and sticky substance on him. They couldn't explain how he got there. That was at Hebden Bridge. The policeman was the same with that TNN. So
Zigmund Adamski was his name, and he was investigated. That case was investigated by Alan Godfrey, who was who about a week later claimed that he was abducted by aliens. But they found he'd gone missing from I think he lived in Halifax or somewhere like that, or it could have been Halifax. He'd gone missing about 3 days before, and they found him on the top of a coal heap. He was naked from the waist upwards, so he still had his pants on, but there was no coal dust or coal dirt on him at all. So it wasn't as if he didn't even have it on his hands. So it wasn't as if he
climbed up.
Why would you climb up a coal heap just to lie on the top of it and have a heart attack and die, which is basically what they thought he died of. But he had marks around his temple at sort of regular intervals, like something had been inserted into his skull. And I think the coroner gave an open verdict at the end because they just couldn't work out what had happened to him. but it was actually Alan Godfrey who investigated it in his capacity as a policeman.
Okay.
And about a week later, he was out on patrol, and he had this experience with this UFO and missing time that after he'd been subject to hypnosis, under hypnosis, told this story of being taken inside the ship, and he was experimented on as well, he said. So who knows?
Yeah.
It's one of those minefields, isn't there? I think even you'll always be talking about it and trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Liz has come out. Random thought maybe the animals were hosting a being, and the being had to be released. So interesting.
Yeah.
This is the problem. This kind of stuff. Maybe it's a case of that we know as a species we're not involved. We're very in the beginnings, I guess, of our design or of our understanding of the greater what's out there.
Maybe this planet just intrigues them more because the life species on it is different to all the others.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a number of unexplained aerial sightings near to sadly what's going on at the minute in Ukraine, near Ukrainian airspace, and they don't know what these, because obviously the airspace is being monitored quite closely to make sure that there's no incursions either way. And I believe that there have been some sightings of aircraft type objects that can't be explained. So it's almost as if they're sort of drawn into areas of conflict. I mean, to me, it seems strange that a lot of UFO sightings, we started to get a lot more UFO sightings after the end of the Second World War.
Yeah.
Although there are records going back before that, the vast majority of them was sort of from like the late 40s and early 50s onwards. And of course, it was after the first atomic bomb was dropped. And you have to wonder whether that, piqued the interest of whatever's out there. We've suddenly got to that stage in our development where we're perhaps a little bit more dangerous than we were before, and so maybe we're being observed. Who knows? But I mean, that's a whole new discussion about what governments know and disclosure and everything else, of which I am not an expert. I'll be honest with you. There are people out there that are far more clued up on things like disclosure, but I'm pretty convinced that governments know more than they're letting on.
Yeah,
we just get called soft disclosure, don't we? There's way more. I mean, the things that they release out to us now, they've had for years and years and years, and they don't. We're kind of the last in the food chain to find out, really, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I think there'll be mass panic.
I was going to say that's the object. Maybe they're just, I don't know. Would there be mass panic? Who knows? Depends on the level of interaction that we have with these species.
Mm. And again, there's the religious aspects of it as well. Because it would suddenly throw a lot of our beliefs as a species into complete chaos.
I was trying to work out who FEMOD was, but you mean the MOD? I was thinking, was that a new FEMOD? So my bad. Have released a lot of information. They have, and the Pentagon as well,
And I think people are becoming more open as well, aren't they? So, I mean, discussions like this, I mean, going back 15, 20 years ago, these were all done behind closed doors. Now they're being done out in the open. People are talking out in the open, having random conversations where beforehand you used to be quiet about them. Now it's quite openly spoken about. And like what you were saying, to talk about ghosts and UFOs and things like that, you can have a conversation anywhere about them, and people more likely to open up and talk about things, or they'll know somebody who's had an experience.
Sorry, I'm laughing at Liz's comment, Liz, but I think there'll be a lot of us trying to hitch a lift on a UFO.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I think you're right.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. No, but it's amazing what I mean. There's obviously. I mean, in this country, there's a 30-year rule where anything that's recorded you know, on a government level can't be released for 30 years. But you can, I mean, I've certainly got some interesting freedom of information stuff. Something about local UFO cases. There was one actually, strangely enough, 1980 seems to have been a really hot year for UFOs. They had Rendlesham Forest, which somebody mentioned on the comments. There was the Alan Godfrey case, and there was also a really well documented case of a UFO seen over the Royal Ordnance Factory in Darwin, near Blackburn. So again, not too far from here. That's in the second book as well, because I got some freedom of information stuff through about that, and that is really interesting because there's the police reports. There's actually sketches that the police made, because this object was seen by the police officers that were on duty at the time. So yeah, you can get a lot of stuff now through freedom of information. Some of it's redacted. Some of the really juicy stuff's redacted, but you can still get quite a lot of stuff if you know where to look for it.
Yeah. Craig, it's been an absolutely brilliant interview. Thank you so much for agreeing. Yeah, we love doing different modalities, and that's pretty much summed up season 2 on Spiritual Talk, isn't it, Leanne? We've had some amazing guests, and it's been absolutely brilliant. But we are going to bounce back next week straight away with I call it season 3. It's just a thing. I just think season 2 has to be dedicated to Leanne. So yeah,
it's been a pleasure.
It has. It really has. And thank you to Dylan as well for doing all the signage and stuff in the background. And big thank you to you, Leanne, and obviously big thank you to you, Craig, for coming on this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I noticed that there were a lot of really good questions, and I'm really sorry that we didn't get to answer them. But if anybody wants to drop me an email through my website, I'll quite happy to chat to anybody. Not a problem.
Yeah, let me just.
Did you want to pick someone? Pick someone for reading
I've been looking through who's been sharing. Can you see on the comments, Craig, whether you can see if someone's shared or not? They have actually put on there, I've shared.
No, I can't see.
Were you jotting names down?
I was, and I've got one. And her name is Suzanne. I'm not going to pronounce this. Klokenga. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Suzanne. But you have won a free reading with me. Oh, Liz, she just said she shared it as well. She'd have been in. But we are going to be reintroducing last half an hour. We're going to be introducing messages, because the gentleman that's coming back on the Spiritual Talk, try not to give it away, will be working alongside me. So that'll be interesting.
Why can you not give it away?
Oh, should I just say it?
Yeah, you're going back to the beginning.
We are going back to the beginning. We're having Anthony back on it. I'm really excited to get Anthony back on. It's going to be brilliant. So yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And our guest next week is the fabulous Michael Shane, physical medium. He was working with the masters from the age of 4, I believe. Very interesting man. So it's going to be another great interview next week. So, gosh, it's that time already. Oh, the book. There it is. Look out for the book, guys.
There we go. That's the book.
Brilliant. So, Leanne and Craig.
Yeah.
It's the end of another.
Been a pleasure, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you back here this time next week. Take care, everybody. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, you just got somebody said, how do we contact you?
Website. Craig, I've just put that up on a website. Oh, let me just put that up. If you go, there it is on the bottom, going across the bottom.
Yeah. It's just craigbryant.co.uk. Just drop me an email through there. There's links to my book, to the podcast.
I was going to say, you should mention the podcast, and they're on Spotify, aren't they?
Yeah, Spotify, iTunes, all the normal ones. It's called Paranormal Pendle Podcast. Actually, if you go to my website, there's a link on there that'll take you to the anchor page, and then you can just go on from there. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Craig.
And if anyone needs me for anything that I've done ongoing, that I've helped them with or anything, just come and find me at gaiachi.co.uk.
And I'll be back this time next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.